Hello everyone, my name is Corey Moorbacher, and this is Leadership and Change Development class with Professor Kenneth Riddle at the University of West Florida. And what I'm doing right now, I'm going to go over Warren Bennis, who is a very influential leadership and management guru, so to speak, who has gone throughout the world and done numerous speaking arrangements. He's consulted numerous people and companies. And what I'm going to do basically is give you a brief overview of his history, like where he came from, what he did, where he grew up, basically things like that. And then we get into his impact that he's had on community management and leadership, because I'll get into that later about what he did to make that impact. And then from there I'm going to go into an interview of him and Behavior Online, where they just gave him a couple questions, like one or two questions, and he just went with it from there. And that's where we'll get into the meat of what he means by leadership. Okay, and now we're going to go into his history. Warren Bennis was born March 8, 1925 in Westwood, New Jersey, to a hardworking family who could not afford to give him time of day to actually read books with him or anything like that. But that didn't stop him from learning or excelling later on in his life, because he learned the hard way of how getting ahead in the world. What he did, though, in 1943 was he enlisted into the Army, and he fought over in the European theater as an infantry officer. And afterwards, after he got out of the military and started going to college and everything, later on in his life, he was actually quoted as saying, "There is no greater time to learn how to become a leader than the military and the lectures he learned at Fort Benning, because nothing at Harvard or MIT will actually give you the kind of leadership skills that you need." But we'll get back to that later on when I go to that interview, because he goes into detail about that. But then when he got out of the service, after he received a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for his time in the European theater, he went to Antioch College, where the president at the time was Douglas MacGregor. Douglas MacGregor is considered one of the founding fathers of modern-day democratic management philosophy. And because of this relationship he had, as being his little protege or mentoree with Douglas, he was actually able to get into MIT, which is one of the positions he actually had as a professor. But currently, right now, today, he is a distinguished professor of business administration at the University of Southern California. And he's also the chairman of the USC's Leadership Institute. Before that, he was a professor at Harvard and Boston Universities. He was also provost and executive vice president at State University of New York Buffalo campus. But then after that, he went to become president of the University of Cincinnati. As well as becoming a president of the college and university, he was also advisor to 4 U.S. presidents in the past, for better or for worse. But he was an advisor to 4 United States presidents. And then after that, he's consulted numerous Fortune 500 companies, both nationally as well as going abroad to consulting international companies, as well as the United Nations themselves. Now, he is very well-rounded and done very numerous things in his life, and he's a still active member of the community. And that's what we're going to go into next. We're going to go into his impact about what he had done to actually become a well-rounded individual that everyone is sought after for leadership topics. Now, Warren has published numerous articles. He's published over 900 articles, let alone in journals, magazines, many university campus books and stuff like that. But he's also published roughly 30 best-selling books, 18 of which are primarily his own, but he's also had numerous ones where he's been co-authored by other well-established individuals in the leadership community, as they both tackle situations or ideas on how to change the leadership field, or how to change the management field, or different trends that they see are going on. So he's really influential, and he has a lot of staying power, and he has a lot of partnerships throughout the world about his ideas, which make him a great candidate to learn from, or to even have a speaker if you're in a huge company that is trying to catch up in the changing times. Now next is labeled leadership guru numerous times. And I'm just going to go through a short list here real quick about some things he's done. Wall Street Journal listed him as one of the top 10 sought-after speakers in management. Forbes magazine declared him Dean of Leadership Gurus. Business Week declared him one of the top 10 thought leaders in the business field. He has also been recognized as one of the top 30 leadership professionals internationally. Let me say that again, internationally. That's all around the world. He's one of the top 30 international gurus. He's been recognized by the International Leadership Association for his contributions in the field of leadership studies by receiving the Leadership Legacy Lifetime Achievement Award, as well as their Distinguished Leadership Award. That's really prestigious and really hard to get, and they know what they're talking about, all kinds of forward-thinking, everything that you can think of for leadership and management. The next thing is his leadership management theory. This is a little taste of what I was talking about earlier. Now, during his 60s, when he was at MIT, as well as when he was at Harvard and all the other colleges that he was a professor at, he started to think more of a less hierarchical and more adaptive institutions that people that need to work for or organizations need to turn into. Now, with that, he was also quoted as saying, humanistic and democratic style leadership are the way to go in this ever-complex and changing world. With the way things have gone so far, that seems to be the trend because he hit it right on the nose back in the day and now has grown into this huge industry and field all of its own, on where people are constantly trying to figure out how to homegrown leaders who are exactly that and they've been in any type of situation or any type of organization, they can flourish and make things happen. But that's what we get into later in this interview I was talking about. The interview with Behavior Online. This is where he just asked a couple questions about this leadership theory and what it means to have homegrown leaders or to teach people how to be leaders. And we're going to get into that right now. Now, in this interview, Warren was asked to expand on what he has to say about being an effective leader, a follower, and a team member. More importantly, he also was asked, what does it take to assist others in becoming effective? And well, what he starts out talking about is how there is no real formula or list or conceptual, like this is A, B, and C that you have to make it. He actually says it's not possible. There is no list or formula. But he does say there are some qualities that do bring out leaders that make them effective or help others become effective. He goes on to talk about in this interview how most organizations will have a list of ranging between 5 to 8 variables that say, hey, if you have these variables or traits or abilities that you will become an effective leader. And he briefly lists those as being technically competent, which means that you understand the business world, that you understand what's going on around you, as being able to actually communicate with people. So you have people skills. You got to be able to get a point across. If you can't talk to people, then you're not going to be effective. And then he goes on to say that you actually have to have conceptual abilities, which means you actually have to be able to conceive what's going on around you and actually see how everything works, how everyone is working as a team or not working as a team. You actually have to be able to figure that out. Then he goes off and says that you have to have actually a good track record, which means where you came from, what you did. Not necessarily more where you came from, that's more of a what were you able to do from where you came from. If you're able to do a lot of crazy, inventive, or motivational things, then yes, that's great. That's going to be a plus for you. Another thing he goes on and says that if you have the right taste for finding the right people to get things done, and the right judgment, you have to have the right judgment too on not just yourself, but as well as people who can help you further your effectiveness or further the organization's goals. And he said finally the last thing you have to have is character. You have to have good character, which goes back to the judgment. If you don't have sound judgment on your things, your character is probably going to be that great. But those are generally the guidelines that most organizations have to becoming an effective leader or helping others become effective. But then he goes on to say after that in this interview that there are two problems with that list that he just gave, and I just briefly expanded on. He said, no one has ever been derailed from a business career because of a lack of business competency or conceptual skills. It's because they've had a lapse in judgment and they did something wrong. That's why they got derailed. That's the first reason why it's wrong with that list. I mean, it happens all the time. People in our very own class are like that. Something's happened and that's why they're here now and they have to redo everything or they're just starting over. It happens. Now, the second part is that he finds it's arguably impossible or difficult to teach effective leadership.